Though it may occasionally seem like it, software developers are not robots, and software delivery is not deterministic. In all likelihood, every conversation with the product owner, or a subject matter expert, or the stakeholders will reveal something. Requirements that were assumed to already be known, the spontaneous new ideas, unforeseen must-haves, and tantalizing nice-to-haves. The potential for scope creep awaits at every turn, and this is just one of many factors making software delivery unpredictable. Until artificial intelligence can produce more than just a regurgitated fizzbuzz solution, it's up to us humans to do the work. And we do so at mere mortal speed. And, bound by other mortal concerns like time and budget constraints, this question inevitably is raised. Are we going to finish on time and on budget? The unprepared lead developer will, depending on their level of self-confidence, either state matter-of-factly, "We don't know," or, in desperation, they'll blurt out some random finger-in-the-air estimate, hoping that it satisfies their imagined expectations of the inquisitor. Or, perhaps they'll simply deflect the question over to the project manager, who'll hastily open up an Excel spreadsheet containing a constantly changing Gantt chart, a boundless, disorienting abyss of confusion, uncertainty, and despair. Of course, it's better to say, "I don't know," than to commit without confidence. But if your job isn't just pushing pixels around or writing for loops, and you're actually responsible for ensuring the successful outcome of your project, the need to answer this fundamental question is not something you can just ignore. The good news is, if cost is simply a function of time and salaries, then answering the on-time part gets you most of the way to answering the on-budget part. The bad news is, answering the on-time part is actually a function of a miscellany of complex parameters that are hard to identify, even in the moment, let alone predict in the future. Thankfully, there's a way to answer the question without knowing all of the unknowns. Instead of desperately clinging to the notion that computer programmers can accurately estimate vast amounts of technological and anthropomorphic complexity up front, this method is rooted in the incremental observation of objective reality, measured at regular intervals with a past performance indicates future performance philosophy that's about as accurate as all but the most clairvoyant among us is going to get. Introducing the Humble Burn-Up Chart. It's a simple visualization plotting work completed against work remaining over time. So, assuming you estimate in story points, and your team is remarkably consistent, yours might look something like this. Starting with 100 points in the backlog, let's say 10 points are completed in the first week with 90 points remaining. Another 10 points completed in the second week with 80 points remaining, and a further 10 points completed in the third week with 70 points remaining. These two measurements of work completed and work remaining can be extrapolated to produce trend lines which help predict the future. Where the two trend lines meet is the current best guess at a completion date. And I say current because, well, things change. An array of variables influence the team's output, and on top of that, the to-do list itself likely doesn't remain static either. As work is completed, ideally the remaining work shrinks accordingly, but sometimes, maybe because of scope creep, legitimate new requirements, estimation adjustments, or whatever, the remaining work might actually increase. On the flip side, maybe as expert scope negotiators weasel their way out of more and more work, or simply as the changing business priorities dictate, the scope of remaining work could also decrease. Now, even if the rate of change in output and scope is high, a decent burn-up chart can actually factor that in with a moving average on work completed and a moving average on work remaining. Again, the trend lines either intersect or they don't. If they don't intersect, then conceivably the project will just go on forever, and the answer to the essential question is no, we're not going to finish on time and on budget. In fact, we're probably not going to finish at all. If the lines do intersect, the answer depends on where the lines intersect. Is it before or after the due date, or after the time at which the budget runs out? Regardless, observing the objective truth will help a good project manager make informed decisions about things like scope management and team composition. These changes in output and scope are nothing to cry about, and with the right tools, it's just another picture of the past that helps paint a picture of the future. So, the tools. There's a good chance your project management suite of choice is capable of producing some kind of trajectory visualization. Either it's an out-of-the-box feature, or it's an extension, maybe a microtransaction, whatever. And I'd say there's a good chance that these options are sufficient. But a few problems may present themselves. As an example, sometimes the charting capabilities in these tools impose certain requirements on the rest of your practices. They might be dependent on the way that your backlog is structured, or the way that your teams and your sprints are organized. Whatever it is, if it imposes some restriction on how you do things that just doesn't work for you, then you have to choose between convenient reporting and comfortable execution. And when you're trying to focus on shipping features and deliver a successful outcome, fighting your project management tools is a very demotivating distraction. Another problem is that the charting capabilities are often overly simplistic, failing to account for at least some of the nuances of the profession, reducing the measurements down to a sort of average points per sprint and extrapolating that over time. It's better than nothing, but when you're dealing with stakeholders who like to interrogate the minutiae of your claims, this kind of reductionism just doesn't cut it. So what do? I'm actually building a free toolkit to help turn any individual contributor into what I'm calling the minimum viable project manager. The goal is to eliminate as much of that unnecessary middle management interference as possible, starting with the world's most unimpressive project burn-up and some basic budget monitoring. MVPM Tools is part of a larger initiative to ubiquitize management and leadership skills among typical software delivery professionals. I'm hoping that this results in more successful projects and an overall less wasteful, more sustainable software development industry. So head on over to mvpm.tools and check out the very work in progress early stages. I'll be making another video soon to describe the current state of things and how to use it in detail, but in a nutshell, create a new project, set your date range, set your budget, set the hourly rate for the team, and start plugging in your achievement and remaining values for every completed iteration. You'll see that the burn-up chart and the metrics update accordingly with every change. Now there's a lot more you can configure, but this is just a start. If you want to give it a go without much more guidance, feel free. I want all the feedback in the world, so jump in, get dirty, get angry, and tell me all about it. Until then, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.